Welcome to Synced on Air. I'm your host, Angelique Robb, and today I have a special guest, Basil Camu. Hopefully, I said that from Leaf and Limb. And I'm really excited to have you on the show, Basil, because you know you're an arborist that has done a huge transformation with your company, and you've actually told employees to not cut down trees. You're an arborist, arboriculture company that does not remove trees. And you had to then rebuild your entire business. And I love the ethos of this, but I also love that you're willing to share, your playbook and how you did this, because this, I can imagine, is huge. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for
And
having me. This is
yeah,
exciting.
so tell us, like, what was the one moment in time that you said, we're going to stop removing healthy trees?
There was a couple of pivotal moments, but the first pivotal moment was after reading Yvon Chouinard's book, The Responsible Company, and then starting to think more about our business model and what was our overall contribution. And taking a step back, it's like, oof, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good with all the removals we were doing, because at the time it was 60% of our business. This was back in 2016 era-ish,
Okay.
thereabouts. That was one really sort of pivotal moment that I remember. And then I think the other pivotal moment was fast forward to 2019, where we had spent 3 years trying to get out of removals by on the sales front, convincing clients, hey, keep your trees. They're great. And it ended up being really, really challenging for a lot of reasons that we can get into. And it was around late summer of 2019 that I realized we were probably going to have to do something more radical, which led to where we eventually landed, which is in 2020. We walked into the new year and we announced publicly that we were no longer offering the service. And at that time, it was 40% of our revenue. So in 3 years, we'd only moved the needle by 20%, or excuse me, differential of 20%. And yeah, those are the two most pivotal parts of the journey that just really stick out. And we can get into details if you want to.
Well, I think we should, because yeah, you just said a few things that I want to know more about, because it's not only what you want to do, but convincing the clients.
Right.
And I personally believe that we don't treat trees with enough respect, especially mature ones. And, I get disappointed to, neighbors to remove their trees in their front yard when they're healthy. Okay. Um, 2016. Do we start
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
weave in a few more bits of the story. Those are just the highlights. I think it's also worth noting that when I started at Leaf and Limb, we were just a normal tree service. We cut trees down and we trimmed trees because we didn't know what pruning was back then. We didn't know what branch collars were. So I really had this incredible learning journey. I didn't know the first thing about trees when I joined this business, but had this amazing journey with trees and soil and really came to appreciate them in a whole new way. And I think that was sitting in the backdrop of my mind when I read Responsible Company. Also, just on a personal note, I just became increasingly hard for me to stomach this idea. I'll give you the classic example: meeting with a client, beautiful white oak in the front yard, maybe multiple, and they want to cut them down to plant grass. That just became really, really tough for me to stomach on a personal level. So a lot of forces at play there, some personal, some professional, just a lot of things making me question whether this was the right thing for us to do. But what we
But you said
found is,
60% of your business. I mean, that's
yeah,
so,
to put it in
by making
perspective,
this change, you're undermining your business.
yeah, in 2020, we basically said goodbye to $2 million in annual recurring revenue, roughly. We're not a huge tree service, but we're large enough, 6 million a year thereabouts. The thing that was really challenging about attempting to steer out of it using sales and marketing was people often felt shamed. It was really hard to navigate these conversations of, you should keep this tree. They're important. They're beautiful. And you go through the list of reasons trying to convince them to keep this tree. And at the end of the day, they just don't necessarily care about any of that. Some people just might say no, but other people might feel shame. They might feel finger wagged. We started seeing some bad reviews, and it was backfiring. It was a really, really challenging road. There's also some structural challenges. If you're thinking about, I've been very active in our sales team for many years, and you get to a sale or a potential sale, and a client says to you, "Hey, I really want this thing done. I want to cut this tree down." So you can look at that and you're like, "Well, that's $3,000. I know I can get the sale, easy sale." Or I can try and convince them of the merits of why soil matters, and hey, we actually don't need to cut it down, and we could solve this through soil. Of course, nobody knows what soil is, so that's barrier number one. Uh, and then you go through this explanation, and you go through just a ton of effort, all so you can make $1,000
Not get the
sale
work.
if you're lucky. Yeah, not get the work. So you have these structural challenges, and you have these complex human psychology challenges. Also, I'm an avid reader. So one book that sticks out to me from that time period is Purple Cow by Seth Godin. I really love that concept. That and Uber brand, I can't remember the author's name. But the idea with Purple Cow is you should be attracting a very specific niche kind of client, and they will love you, and you are unique, and your business model is unique, and then they will go out and sing your praises, and then you can build a market share. So all of this swirling into what became this fairly major decision to simply say, okay, we're going to totally change the paradigm. We're going to take this service off the table. So if you call us, it's just not an option. It's like you go to the
Mhm.
hot dog joint here in Raleigh, and if you ask for ketchup, this is true. They will get very upset with you. They do not offer ketchup. So if you want ketchup on your hot dog at this particular place, the Roast Grill, you just don't go to the Roast Grill. So anyway, that was
Good
kind of the idea.
analogy. Now I know.
Yeah, it was a challenge. Now here's the crazy part: we did not know COVID was coming that year. That made things real dicey.
Must have been scary. So sorry, I'm kind of harping back on 2016 because you tried to convince people and you tried to change that part of your business and you had to go the extreme route. And like I could see when you're kind of maybe a foot in both camps that like, maybe you put people off completely. Like maybe they just go and hire somebody else and you don't get any work from that conversation. But also, yeah, that it's hard on your salespeople. It's hard on everybody to go that in between. I can see why but also that's very scary to draw a line and say, we're going to have a lot less clients. We have $2 million that we're putting at risk per year. What was what was the environment like in the company with employees and just within the company?
Yeah, I had learned years earlier for certain decisions, you just better not announce them. You really need to get buy-in. So definitely took time to have meetings with all levels of the company. Really wanted to get buy-in into this idea. It was so big, really had to have buy-in. The good news is a lot of people agreed with this idea. Not everybody.
Okay.
And we did contract. So it kind of worked out, honestly. The people that didn't really want to do this, we needed to lose about 10 people or a little more. So it kind of worked out.
Okay.
Not saying I'm ever happy to lose people, but I mean, if you don't want to be here and we need to shrink because we've just lost 2 million annual revenue, well, it works. And that's what happened. We said goodbye to 10 or so people.
Okay. So yeah, but hard to shrink and hard
Yeah, it
maybe
was.
emotional and yeah.
Right. It was. Here's the good news. Now people listening know that I can give the playbook. The playbook works. We speculated on the playbook based on a bunch of reading and experience and intuition and hope and optimism, quite frankly. But there's enough evidence to support this idea that you could shrink as a company and really sharpen your focus and become king of the tree preservation and care hill and then regroup and expand from there. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. One of the biggest things that we noticed right away was our move created a lot of controversy among our clients. We had both sides. We had people who were very angry at us. I got some very interesting emails during that time, but also people who were really exuberant about what we were doing. And those people turned into fans, and fans will go out and tell people about you actively. They're the ones who at the party or the hangout, they're like, "Oh, you got to know about this company," and that's exactly what happened. So we traded a large cohort of loyal clients, and we were a great service provider, still are. Large cohort of loyal clients for a smaller group of exuberant fans, and that is worth a lot. It was a polarizing moment, and I think actually, as I'm now down the road ways. It's 2025, almost 2026. And I've come to realize there's a lot of merit to being very clear about who you are and you will attract the people that you want to attract, but you can't try to be vanilla. There's no room for vanilla in business. You have to do something or be something or stand for something. And it's better to be something specific than try to be a generalist to all.
I think that's a great message for all business owners. Yeah, thank you. Um, so tell us what services you are focusing in on because you've cut out half of the revenue and rejigging.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a multi-part plan, but sort of the service that carried us through was this thing called structural pruning. And structural pruning is a very specific kind of pruning. There's a lot of pruning that happens. Most pruning is pretty useless, but structural pruning actually makes a tree stronger. And that's very valuable because that means your property is safer, particularly in the face of storms. It also means trees will live longer, and that is very important to us. It's also very important to the well-being of Earth. As a fun aside, people may not realize that as trees age, they actually increase their rate of carbon sequestration and increase their rate of feeding wildlife. You think about a balloon expanding, and this has to do with quadratic formulas and all kinds of nerdy math, but actually they do not slow down, they speed up. So these large mature trees are exponentially more important than young trees. So basically, structural pruning was this thing that really nobody does. Very few people in our industry do structural pruning, actually, which is shocking considering Ed Gilman has written some of the best books you can imagine on this topic. Luckily, it's getting more attention now, which is good. But anyway, high value service. It takes a lot of expertise, and not many people were offering it. So the first play was we did very deep education with sales and operations on how to do structural pruning, how to sell it, how to be top tier at structural pruning. And that was the first thing we went after to help replace our loss and removals. And it did carry a lot of weight. The other thing that happened is we became this undisputed king of tree care. So we got a lot more calls for soil and tree construction and things of this nature. That was very helpful. And then a really shocking event was many of the other tree services with whom we had been previously competing now sent work to us because we weren't doing removals anymore and they weren't doing tree care. So that was kind of an interesting, unexpected
Yeah,
twist.
yeah, that is fantastic. More collaborative.
Yeah, and here's some more. This is good. Now I'll get a little geeky I don't know how deep I should go, but I'm gonna go one more layer deep. In the tree service industry, removals, I've come to see it more clearly now, but I knew it at the time, but I can really see it now. Removals are the monkey on the back of every business because they require the biggest equipment. It's the riskiest work. You have lots of damages. The margins are super thin because so many people do removals illegally. It's rampant, unfortunately. They don't have workers' compensation, et cetera. We could get into a whole long story there. But the point is, you have this giant monkey on your back and it prevents you from being able to do much with your staff. So once we got that off our back, we were able to cross-train staff on every part of tree care: soil, biology, the structural pruning I already mentioned, and a whole host of other topics. And now we were able to create an operations team that was well rounded on their tree care expertise, which produced a much better client experience. It meant also that we didn't have these crazy mistakes on operations that you see in other tree services. Meaning, like for example, a tree service brings you a load of wood chips and drives across the root zone of your oak. And then they also were able to help sell services to clients on site because they could see things: a buried root collar, an issue here, an issue there. So that was also one of the things that helped offset the losses.
Wow. That's fantastic. I love the collaboration as an add-on that you were no longer competition as well. I mean, I think, and also it looks like, you're able to, yeah, focus on so many parts that help the tree survive better, and you're probably helping other plants survive better around them as well.
Yeah. Other interesting things emerged. We came to realize we no longer needed specialized fleets. So we actually invented a truck that can do it all. So now instead of having to send different operations to a job site, we were able to get to not only a place where all of our staff were all well rounded tree experts, but all of our trucks could do all services. So fleet costs reduced, efficiencies increased. We're using this truck that's not a thing in our industry because in removals, you need a big dump truck. Well, when you don't have removals, you no longer need that big dump truck. You can cut that bed in half and now stage all kinds of other things on that truck, like equipment to add compost tea onto a tree's root zone, or an air compressor to decompact soil. So all
Sure.
kinds of just wild and unusual things that honestly, it was pretty, it's been really, really fun in this new paradigm. We're a regenerative tree and land care company that leaves sites healthier than we found them. And we are the first of our kind. We're the first company to ever become B Corp certified in our industry. And honestly, I really hope we're the start of a new industry, a regenerative tree and land care industry for the suburban landscape.
I do too. I do. There's no excuse now that you're sharing the playbook.
Yeah, that's all in the book. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. It's meant to be, I mean, honestly, I wrote the book for first and foremost for the average homeowner, but for the savvy reader, they recognize that, oh, this is an entire business plan. So whether you have a tree service or you want to start a tree service, and by the way, we're beyond tree service now. We're land care also. We convert lawns into meadows and do all kinds of cool ecological restoration. But this is a playbook for a cool new business model.
And you're sharing it. I mean, this is just amazing. So, what are your thoughts on our industry, or should I say, the arboriculture industry?
I'm not too kind to the arboriculture industry. I'm certainly a skeptic and a critic. The truth is, we call ourselves the tree care industry, but it's greenwashing. We're not. We're the tree removal industry. We cloak it in fancy names and fancy terms like arboriculture and integrated pest management. But really, what it is just use of toxic chemicals. It's degradation of the land. The end result of our industry is that we leave the land more broken than we began, and that's really unfortunate because the most unfortunate part about it is that many people, I shouldn't say many people, some people enter this industry with a deep love for trees. And they get into this industry and they realize, man, there's nowhere to go to actually love trees. And there aren't many nonprofits that love trees. And there aren't many government jobs that love trees. Those jobs are far and few between. So I would like to see our industry just flip on its head and become the Loraxes. I think we can stand for something good. And I think, there's another nuance here, which is hiring is the bane of most tree services and landscapers. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to work these jobs, surprisingly, not surprisingly, that was sarcasm. I mean, who wants to cut down their shade in the blistering heat or ride a lawnmower and spray herbicide all day? These are not jobs that anybody wants. So hiring is a real problem. We don't have that problem because we're doing meaningful work. So I think not only could we stand for something good, but we solve our hiring problem because we're doing meaningful work and we're now contributing to the healing of Earth, which is just, stated another way. This is environmentalism. This is environmental issues. We can be a part of that in the suburban landscape. So I have this vision that we can be something noble.
Yes. Yes. And I think there are companies doing the noble route and improving the soil. I think it's interesting you mentioned that clients don't understand what soil is. I think we still have a lack of understanding in our industry too.
Definitely.
And that was one of the things coming from the UK to here, where we were always looking at the soil first and how do we amend it and what we can plant in it that will help, or how we can work with the soil that we have. Um, and I think that there's a lot of degradation around the US that we need to deal with and understand before we can have healthy landscapes.
Yeah, I mean, landscaping industry is the same situation. They degrade the land and leave it worse off. The nursery industry, unfortunately, is in the same boat. We've got all these backwards business models. And the cool thing is, we can flip them and still make money. You can, instead of planting grass, you can plant meadows and still earn recurring revenue from that. And
Mhm.
when we go down this road, all kinds of new things pop up. So I think we don't even have to trade our livelihoods out for some other livelihood. It's just flipping it on its head. And I'll just say this from experience, both personal and everybody here at Leaf and Limb, the work is very rewarding. it is a really big difference of doing a day of work where, like it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. People think, yeah, very hard work. But difference between doing hard work and having done something meaningful versus doing hard work and you just cut a bunch of pine trees down that day, or you rode on a mower for 10 hours.
Mhm. Yeah. How are you giving back? How are
Right.
you making, the earth give us more? Well, yeah. I I do think that it's hard, though. I'm not saying you're saying that it's easy, but, when you do something new, you don't know what it costs. So you're going back to the basics, and you're having to figure out how much to charge for different services. If you've never installed a meadow, you know, how you can do that and be profitable. It you know, I'm sure you had those challenges in 2019, 2020 when you're starting to do new things. What's your advice for business owners? Because you're going, okay, you're frantically busy now, you can't get enough staff, and okay, you should stop and you should do all different things that you don't know how much they cost and how to train your
Yeah.
people and all of that. After you've been through it, and you're speaking about all the great things that came out of it. What's your advice for maybe even what kind of dedication you have to do this? Because that has to be some challenge, and the costing, the people, the training.
Yeah. Lots of multifaceted answer. I think if I'm speaking to somebody who's starting a business, well, it's very simple. Go get my book and read it. Um, and email me if you need help. My email's in the book. The book is free. That's the easy one. The harder one is the business owner who
Exists.
wants to pivot.
Yeah.
If it's a tree service, I would recommend that you probably do a similar playbook. Start with your structural pruning. Structural pruning is a very high value service that clients, once you explain it to them, they get it. And you can use good terms like this helps increase the resilience of your trees in the face of storms. Everybody loves that because storms are a very serious thing for many homeowners. And that's probably your lever to change. And you are going to have to do a little bit of soul searching. I think you kind of got to actually want to do this. You shouldn't do it because you're going to make more money. I mean, I don't think you're going to make more money. I think you're going to make the same money. It's just different work. So to that end, I'd recommend thinking about sort of like bigger picture stuff. I like Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. It's a little long-winded. The TED Talk is just as good. Actually, it's better probably. I also like his book, The Infinite Game or The Infinite Company. I can't remember what it's called. And it's thinking about a business built for 500 years versus 50 years. So
Mm.
a little soul searching required. That was also a part of my journey in getting here. So ideally, you would establish your business's purpose, which is probably similar to your own, and a really good set of values that resonate with you. Those would be good starting places for a tree service. I think on the landscaping side, you could make simple transitions. Like for example, you could phase out all of your chemicals and fertilizers and start using compost tea, neem oil, things like that. That would be an easy transition. I think beginning to offer native meadows instead of lawns is a good transition lever. These are all possible ideas, and that's probably what I would do. Well, I mean, what I did is a little more radical, but those would be easier, gentler ways to transition.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that.
Also, I should mention one other thing. Chances are you'll be the first in your urban market. So everybody in your market who cares about
Differentiation.
trees will flock to
Yeah.
you. So there's like a first position advantage here. There's pros and cons about being first position, but there's certainly some advantages. So be first position, and you're going to soak up a huge bunch of enthusiastic tree huggers or anti lawn people.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and just like you said about the arborists in your area, you became, collaborators and referring work. Well, they referred work to you, maybe not the other way around.
Yeah, we don't
Like,
refer tree removals. Like we have
yeah.
ethics, and the ethics are if a tree's dangerous and it's hazardous, going to hurt somebody, of course. But we're not going to look at that oak and say, "Oh no, we don't do it. You should call Billy." We're going to try. We're going to convince you to keep that oak. Tell you how to
Yes.
save it. You can take it or leave it, up to you.
Mhm. No, I think that's a strong position, and I think, focusing on the transition of companies, because that's where it is harder. think it's easier when you're starting your business, and great playbook for a new business owner, but the transition is hard because it's so easy to do it the way you've done it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
our industry seems to be quite, it's quite rigid when it comes to doing things how you've done things before.
yeah, yeah. You probably should learn a little bit. Like I would recommend Purple Cow by Seth Godin. The other book that I was telling you about was Rethinking Prestige Branding by Wolfgang Schaefer.
Okay.
I would recommend The Responsible Company by Yvonne Chouinard. I recommend Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I've got some others. Actually, the appendix of my book has some cool reading recommendations. But all this to say is it would be worth doing a little reading. I do think to do this right, there's a bit of a letting go of the trapeze moment. You do have to let go of the trapeze and jump onto the new one. And in that teeny tiny gap of free fall, it can be quite terrifying. But the other good news is I have now done this. We have done this. So you can look to us. We have tons of information about this. It's less daunting now, I would hope, since we've done it.
Yeah. Well, and you're sharing it and you're open to being contacted. And I think that, yeah, it has to have been scary at certain moments, and you've done it, and you've recovered back to where you were before removing that service
Yeah, we've surpassed it now, actually.
and surpassed it. Okay. No, I
Yeah,
guess that was my
right.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're 65 strong now and growing rapidly. I just hired a leadership team actually because it was getting to be more than I could handle, and they're doing amazing. It's very exciting.
Well, congratulations. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I think it's yeah, it's great that you're serving as an example for everybody, because we need people like you to take that leap and explain to the rest of us how to do it and how to have that confidence in our own, ethics and what we want for the earth. I see, everything that we do is an ecosystem, and it's like for synced, it's like design, build, and maintain is an ecosystem. And we're forgetting about parts of it, and that's what, trees need soil. Construction often damages trees, all these things, everything that anybody does in our industry impacts another group.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll add 2 layers to this. One, you kinda hinted at this, but we're all works in progress. So I love Patagonia sent out this great transparency report yesterday, and they talked about this point of progress over perfect, meaning don't let great be the enemy of good. So obviously leaf and limb, everything I'm saying, we are hypocrites. We're still driving a giant fleet of diesel trucks, and I mean, we have a long way to go in terms of fulfilling our purpose, but it's progress. And I think it's important. It doesn't have to be, if you think about transitioning, a step in the right direction is still a step in the right direction. And then to those who are listening who are tree huggers or environmentalists, I would say there's a little Trojan horse built in here. Not a little one, it's the big one actually. At the core of what we're doing, we are aiming to change hearts and minds in the suburban landscape. And we recognize that suburban landscape only makes up 2 to 3% of land mass in the US, but it is where people live, and where people live they vote and spend dollars. So we can have a road in the environmental movement. What is the road, like what is the green industry doing right now to support the environmental movement? Really not much, honestly. So I think this is a chance for the green industries to actually take a serious and active role. I know the multi-billion and multi-million dollar tree services and landscape services will never transition. But there's a whole host of regional companies and mom and pop shops and startups. And I think there's just something great waiting on the horizon here.
Totally agree. Love it. I love it. Thanks for driving that forward and doing all the hard work. And you mentioned that you did this during COVID as well. I mean, that that's another complication that you haven't. I mean, you briefly went over that,
We got
and
lucky, honestly. I mean, just lucky. We were just very fortunate to have that fan base. And you know what else was so fortunate? There was a reporter here locally whose name was Ed Crump, and Ed wrote a story about what we were doing, and that was really helpful for 2020. I mean, it gained so much traction online. People were so we definitely got some lucky breaks. That is just how it is. Life is a bit of luck and a bit of being in the right place at the right time, and all that, all and hard work too. So Oh, you know what else was lucky on that? We were allowed to continue working because we're outdoors. We were teams of two, so we were within the thresholds of what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. So very fortunate. If we were a restaurant, well, that would have been the end.
Yeah. Well, we are fortunate. Our industry kind of boomed in that time, but not every country was that lucky.
Yeah,
Back in the UK, it was really shut down quite a lot, and the industry did suffer in that time. So I think that every country handled it slightly differently. Every
yeah.
state, every
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 municipality. Yeah,
yeah. And so but I also think that it sounds like you quoting all these books, it's not like you blindly jumped. You did your homework,
yeah,
you prepared as much as you could, you
yeah.
trained your people and leapt at the same time. So yeah, you do have to trust, but you have to prepare too. You can't leave it all up to luck and fate and jumping. And
Yeah,
so
I'm
those
very tolerant.
resources are
I'm tolerant
invaluable.
to risk, but it has to be calculated risk. And in this case, the calculations were there. It wasn't guaranteed, but everything looked like it could work.
Well, so you've given us like the first steps for a landscape business, for a tree company. Are there any things that you can, I mean, I recognize we have so many people to educate. We have the general public. We have construction companies that work around mature trees. And this might be a tall order, but how can we get the message out about, I mean, I feel like, you hear it from lots of different places how important mature trees are. But I also see it every day that they're getting damaged, even though there's a protection area under it. We're not even looking at them and parking cars under trees, and I've been guilty of that too. But now that I know more, I'm behaving differently. And I guess this is going back to the question of, you tried to convince people and clients back in 2016,
Yeah.
and that was a challenge. So how do we get people to believe in the power of protecting mature trees?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so our entire marketing budget, and it's a lot. I should say we're firm believers that you have to be investing in marketing and you have to be investing in sales. These are the wind that moves the ship. If you don't have these, you're just dead in the water. So our
Yeah,
marketing budget is spent solely on education. We now do a newsletter a week and they're not selling, they're educating and they're fun.
educating.
And what we do is we aim to keep it simple. We aim to inspire and not wag the finger. That's a really important distinction. There's a
Okay.
lot of finger wagging these days. We try not
Wow.
to use fear. We're trying to, again, we want to inspire joy over fear, right? We also strong hooks. We know that not many people care about the well-being of Earth, sadly, and that's just is reality. We're not going to just sit here and say, well, so instead we focus on what do they care about. They care about money and they care about time. So everything that we're selling has real value built in. It's going to save you time, it's going to save you money, it's going to keep you safe or whatever it may be, and it's good for the well-being of Earth. So I would say if a business wanting to go in this direction, think about doing a high quality newsletter that educates. Our newsletter list, we're 70,000 strong right now. It is a massive source of community engagement for us. And yeah, we don't sell, but it still leads to sales. People call us because they're learning and they trust us. So it's a non
Hmm.
sales tactic to do exactly what you've said, which is teach people about these things. We make fun videos. They're simple language. They're articles, just lots of ways you can get people into this work or just basic understanding. That's been our method for doing what you've just asked. I think in the future, more people will know this stuff and you can rely on more traditional marketing. And we do rely on traditional marketing also, I should add that. But I think education has to be a big part of it right now,
Hmm.
since very few people understand these things.
Yes. Very powerful. Thank you. Thank you.
It's
I think
also,
that
go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think it's up to all of us. We can't say people don't care about this. We have to keep educating
Yeah.
in our roles and our companies and anywhere you can.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody listening, get on our newsletter and watch what we do. You can do the same thing. All of our resources are available. Again, I want to harken back to the book. The book is sort of the culmination of everything that we've learned along the way in terms of what we are, our services we offer, and lots of cool tips in there. That's also freely available. So you can repurpose our material or use it as is to make it easier, especially if you're a young startup. I had more to add to that and I totally forgot it. But
It's
that's
okay.
that's the heart of it.
Well, and I'm thinking, landscape designers might want to, sign up to, design needs to understand, everything about trees and how we can treat them with respect. Construction, every part of the process. So, like, that's why I almost wish we didn't have you know, all these little silos that we're
Yeah.
in, because then we would have all these neat discussions about how one person's work or one group's work can benefit another groups in our industry, and soil cells and giving trees room to grow from the planning stage is huge.
Yeah.
So gosh, okay, so I think the lesson is everybody needs to sign up to Leaf and Limb's newsletter. And
It's fun. We have a good time. It's certainly a good. It's good fun. We have readers from all over, lots of local readers too.
well, I just really appreciate you wanting to share your playbook, because again, it's not every day that people want to do that. And you've gone through a lot in a short time. So really powerful information for
Yeah,
business
it's
owners.
I'll
And
also just add, I've already mentioned a lot of great benefits, but the other thing is just I have found a lot of personal joy and satisfaction. I've just very much enjoyed this. I didn't know what a native meadow was 10 years ago, but now my yard is covered in them. And I can tell you, I just love it. There's so many fun butterflies and insects out there. That's sort of on a personal level, but we hear the same thing from clients. There's just a lot of joy in this work. So I think it's super fun.
we'll keep it going. And it sounds like we have a few more topics so we'll have you back on the podcast
Perfect.
to further discuss all of the issues that we
I'd love to. There's so
oh,
many ways we could go.
yes, yes. Basil, this has been so much fun. Thank you for being on the podcast, and I look forward to our next discussion.
Thanks for having me.